Welcome back, Rutgers fans, to the Chopping Block, your Rutgers podcast with Garden State Sports. My name is Andrew Hefner, your host, alongside our expert on Rutgers football, Dylan Shaw. Dylan, it was a good day today, no?
Yeah, it was. Big win today.
Yeah, so Rutgers improves to 2-0 on the season with a win at home, 45-17 versus the Miami of Ohio RedHawks as they drop to 0-2. And there were a lot of things to talk about this game. Certainly improvements from last week. We know we were obviously a little scared with the defensive performance, where really that Ohio game in week one could have ended very differently if not for the amazing offensive performance like the one that we saw again this week. Of course, 45 points for a rejuvenated Scarlet Knights offense. Dylan, I just want to get your immediate reactions first, and then we can dive a bit into some of the big stories from this week. So go ahead with whatever you want to say.
Obviously, I mean, best game that Ethan Kaliakmanis has played at Rutgers, in my opinion. Obviously against a lower opponent, but he played out of his world. Ian Strong with his career high in receiving yards today, at 116 yards and two touchdowns. He played unbelievable. And then KJ Duff and DT Sheffield also contributed with 71 yards and 37 yards respectively, with a touchdown for each. And that just shows these three receivers are like gonna make a real Big Ten receiving core. Like they're no joke. It doesn't matter they're playing Miami, Ohio. There's high expectations for Big Ten play, but they're showing that they're gonna be good. The defense, it gave up 31 to Ohio, and there were questions coming into today, and it didn't look bright for the first quarter. It looked like it was just a repeat from last year or last week. Big chunk plays in the first quarter, a big passing play where the safeties just broken coverage multiple times. It's game granted. Like Jet Elad, transfer from UNLV, and Todd Sanders, sophomore, who was a true freshman last year. I don't know if it's miscommunication, just bad reads, but those two need to figure it out. But props to the corners. They played really well today. Jacoby Henderson, Cam Miller, Bo Masco with a um honestly a game-changing interception where it was, I believe 10-7 Ohio. Miami, Ohio was inside of our 30, and they were driving. They were driving. I think it was like a late. I think they got a penalty, and there was like first and goal. They were backed up or something, and Bo Masco read the quarterback perfectly, jumped the route, picked it off, and took it 70 yards maybe to like the 5 yard line. And that was a turning point because it was looking like Miami High was going to take the lead there, or at least tie it at the worst. And that's momentum shifting play out of one of the more experienced players on the defense. And the D line, a few sacks in this game. But I did like the pressure they're applying. They did miss a lot of the sacks. Like they got home and then they really wouldn't wrap up on DeQuan Finn, Miami, Ohio quarterback, but they were applying more pressure than last week. It looked like they were dominating the line. They weren't Miami, Ohio couldn't run the ball on. So defense played much better, and that's a good sign going into what should be an easy week and then Big Ten play. So happy with the results today.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I almost think that the receivers last week saw what the duo or even trio of the running backs did and decided that this week would be their week because overall in the passing game, 260 yards between Ian Strong, KJ Duff, DT Sheffield, among with some others. And then, of course, Anton Raymond, CJ Campbell Jr., and even Jashawn Benjamin getting some touches, shined again with a combined 162 rushing yards, two touchdowns for them, and four for that core three receiving core. And I think you're right. I think that this offense looks better than it has in my years of semi paying attention to Rutgers football. Obviously, you've watched it for a lot longer and you know the struggles that they've gone through in the past many, many years. Um, but I think everything you said was correct, and especially for the defense, who early on, if I don't think if they had made that interception there, it would have been a completely different game because then Miami of Ohio is back within one score. Rutgers offense is going to be looking to extend their lead once again, and they did get back within seven at one point in the, I believe in the second quarter. But then Rutgers was
Third
able to
one.
kind of third quarter, yeah, and then Rutgers was kind of able to run away with it in the end. But I want to talk a little bit about what you saw from Daquan Finn. This is his 7th year of college. He came from Baylor, where he was the backup quarterback last year. 251 yards in the air and 85 yards on the ground. And this is the second straight week that the Scarlet Knights faced really a dual threat quarterback with Parker Navarro last week. And really early on, they didn't seem to fare too well with him either. So what changes are you going to be looking for him to make, especially when limiting the scramble and running game from some of these quarterbacks?
Well, I mean, a good point is a dual threat quarterback again, but you could tell that Shiano and this defensive coordinator group and the defensive group, they made changes. They definitely knew what they were getting themselves into with DeQuan Finn, and you could tell that the way they were applying pressure to the quarterback, it wasn't an all-out blitzes where they would come from all angles. They did that once, and Finn took off for a big run. I think it was, I believe, in the first or second quarter. And after that, they kind of did a more spread type of look where they try to collapse the quarterback into the pocket and make him either make the read or scramble out like using like finding the hole or something. It wasn't just like a big glaring hole if they didn't get home on the blitz. And credit to Finn, he did make a lot out of nothing many times, and the defensive line couldn't get home. But you could tell the adjustment was made, and that's a good sign going into these future weeks because one, there's not as many running quarterbacks in the Big Ten that will play. There's obviously they can all run, but they're not going to be heavy focused on it like DeQuan Finn is. But the way they could make the adjustment today, it's a good sign. And I mean, the corners were, in my opinion, the worst group of last week's game. And I don't know if it was just an off day for them, but today they were on their game. They were not letting like the Miami Ohio receivers have any breathing room really. And if it wasn't for the safeties, I really see this game being like a 7 points. They could be scoring 7 points max. And that's credit to Cam Miller's credit to Jacoby Henderson, and that's good going into next week. And Daquan Finn, he played great. 7th year player. He's experienced. He's a journeyman. He's been to 3 or 4 schools, but this defense, they locked him up. They stood on business, and it's a good sign going into Norfolk State.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I think that the secondary was really the most concerning part of last week. You mentioned a lot of transfers, especially there, and it looks like just through one extra week of practice where they could really start to break down game film, where they could look at where they went wrong, because there were a lot of very glaring mistakes last week, from leaving the quarterback wide open, not covering your man, things like that. So I think that this was definitely a step up. I mean, surrendering 17 to Miami of Ohio is never necessarily uh, an amazing thing, but I think that again you're gonna have one more building week next week with FCS Norfolk State, and then you're gonna be able to head into, like you said, Big Ten play with kind of you've gotten through all of your experiments, you've won the games you've needed to win, and now you're going to be ready to face the opponents that really, really matter for this season, where they are looking to achieve a lot. So, in terms of Norfolk State, I think that, well, we obviously know the big story is Michael Vick is now the head coach there. They are currently 0-1 on the season in the MAEC with Otto. How do we say his last name? Otto Kunz as their quarterback. He's a senior. Yet to actually record a touchdown on the season, but he has been around for a little bit, and I would assume knows what he's doing. I think next week is really going to be an experimental week. We're going to look at different plays we could run, how we're going to balance out Campbell and Raymond in the backfield, although they've already done a pretty good job of doing that. And yeah, is there anything else you're going to be looking for Rutgers to really show next week against FCS opponent?
Well, honestly, I like how you said it, experimental week. Like, this is the type of week where we can really open up the playbook, try new schemes on defense, focus on things that we really struggled on. And if you make the mistake against FCS Northeast, or sorry, I'm playing like too much college football right now. FCS Norfolk State, they're not gonna like kill you on it. They'll make a lot more mistakes than we will. And it's the type of game to get your players ready because the week after that, you have a Friday night game under the lights at home against Iowa. And that's a test, right? They're a good team. They suffered a loss today, but that doesn't mean anything, right? And I hope that they come out. I hope they just keep the foot on the pedal, blow out the team, and just get a lot of momentum going into Iowa because that's important. Right now, I think the spirits are definitely up now after today's game, and just keep raising those spirits and get through next week will be very good for the team.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Norfolk State and then Iowa, four straight home games to enter the season, and then they're heading on the road. Some pretty big road trips, and some of them not even road trips. Iowa, Minnesota, and then all the way out to Washington, which is definitely going to be a fun one. Where obviously their matchup last year ended in interesting fashion. But I think that you're right that Norfolk State, let's put up some, let's pad the stats at least a little bit, and then Iowa is going to be a huge game. Fox prime time, 8 o'clock. But we'll get more into that kind of as the weeks move on after what we hope will be a nice and light FCS matchup next week. Um, I do want to mention a little bit about kind of Miami of Ohio going into this game because we didn't have our preview show this week. Uh, Kenny Tracy, the running back, returned for his first game last week and then his second game this week after suffering a season ending injury just a year ago. He only had 6 carries today, which makes sense as they're really trying to kind of get him back into things, but also there weren't really many chances for Miami of Ohio to take advantage of the run game tonight, besides, I would say, Daquan Finn kind of making his big plays. He had one 39-yard rush, and he also scored a touchdown there for 85 yards. Total in terms of receiving, Keith Reynolds and Cam Perry were the real duo out there, 7 and 4 receptions respectively, and each of them had a 60-plus yard reception, which in terms of the Rutgers defense is not great. So how do you think they're really going to look to pad up those big plays? Because we saw it last week as well, just huge gains from Ohio, and then this week a gain of 69, 62, and then 39 on the ground. So certainly there looks like there needs to be some buttoning up there, especially with the secondary.
No, definitely. Because if you look at Miami, Ohio's week one matchup, they got shut out against Wisconsin. They did only give up 17 to the Badgers, and it was a competitive game, but they got shut out. And they weren't giving, Wisconsin was not giving up these 60-yard plays. Their safeties were not misreading the coverages. And Wisconsin's a real Big Ten team. And you had one where it was like Jet Elad bit on the double move. Pretty, pretty just bad coverage, honestly. It wasn't like some amazing route. It was a good route, but like, you can't bite on that as a safety. That was saved the touchdown, but that went for 69 yards, I believe. And then the other one, just another like poor defensive like communication. Todd Sanders, I believe, was just like he was in the center, he was in like the middle playing the deep zone, and he kind of bit on where the corners were, and then just streaking down the middle was the Miami high receiver. It was really, it was nothing crazy. He just lined up in the slot and kind of just ran in a straight line and found himself the open zone. So those are things we have to fix. And one more, like there was another one, it was like a 40, 50-yard like catch and run, but luckily it was called back for an illegal pick play. Head coach of the Miami High RedHawks was livid on the sidelines, believed it was the wrong call. I am a biased Rutgers fan, obviously, but honestly, I think it was the right call. The receiver, I think it was number 4 on Miami High, kind of acted as a illegal pick play as a blocker, kind of took out our corner, and the crossing route got open. He took it for like 30 yards after the catch. So I think it was the right call, but I haven't looked at the game clip, so who knows? It could have been the wrong call, and that's something we need to also fix. But like these are not like scheme issues. These are not coverage issues. I mean, these are not like corner issues. These are all just the safeties. Those two safeties, Todd Sanders and Jet Elad. If they figure out their their coverages, if they figure out how to communicate with each other, this defense can be good. I see the potential in it. This was a much improved game from Ohio. And also shout out Ohio. They beat West Virginia today at
Oh,
home.
Wow.
17-10. So, hey, that's not like a walkover team we beat. We'll see how they do against Ohio State next week, but, but it's not a walkover team we beat. So you can take a little bit of not like pride, but take a little bit more comfort in winning that game and knowing that like other Power Four teams have lost. But as I'm saying, just these two safeties, I think, are the glaring issue of the defense right now. And if the D line can get a little more pressure, finish off a few of these more sacks, I think the chunk plays will lessen. And because they have a lot of time in the pocket, we're not getting any pressure. So an experienced quarterback can make these throws. But these are simple fixes, and I really see these next 2 weeks of practice, hopefully just getting through Norfolk State, obviously. These next 2 weeks of practice can be very important if they can fix these small mistakes going into Big Ten play.
Yeah, and I mean, something that you mentioned actually with the penalty, Chuck Martin, the head coach of Miami of Ohio, I was watching his press conference in preparation for an article I wrote this week, but he mentioned that limiting penalties this week was going to be their biggest like key to success, and that did not happen. There was a lot of holding I saw, especially in the red zone. I think there was one play where we got half the distance to the goal line. I think we were at the 11 or something like that. So that's just kind of the unacceptable play to make. Like you said there, the illegal play that they ran and just things like that. So, of course, I would think that that would be one of the things he would be most upset about um, coming out of this game. In terms of kind of a look around the Big Ten real quick, the big matchup this week, Michigan, Oklahoma. I believe right now Oklahoma. It is halftime. Oklahoma is up 14-0. Nebraska up big on Akron. USC up big on Georgia Southern. Michigan State and Boston College are all knotted up at 21 in the third. Purdue up 10 on Southern Illinois in the third as well. UCLA down big to UNLV heading into halftime. And just some blowouts this week for Ohio State versus Grambling, Penn State versus FIU, Oregon versus Oklahoma State, Illinois versus Duke. So really, these have been some off weeks. Minnesota, Northwestern State, 66-0. So really, this week has been kind of a down week overall for Big Ten matchups. Of course, if Michigan kind of maybe goes down there versus Oklahoma, that would be have some implications potentially later on. But once we get into Big Ten play, everything's going to continue to heat up. And I personally, as a non-fan of Rutgers, I can say that I'm very excited for it. But overall, how are you really feeling going into Big Ten play?
I think it's a stacked conference this year for sure. I don't see a team besides maybe Northwestern, maybe Purdue. Purdue hasn't looked awful as I expected them to be. I don't really see a team in this conference that is going to be like one of those like, all right, check this game off for a win. We play Purdue, which you look for it to be a win, but it's on the road. It's in West Lafayette, so you can never guarantee a win anytime on our schedule really, except maybe next week. So it's not like the best situation we're in right now. Our schedule is very difficult to say the least. We play Iowa, we play Oregon, we play Washington, we play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. We play the best of the best. Maybe the one team we avoid is like USC, but we play Illinois as well. Like we play the all the premier teams in the Big Ten, and the teams that are not top of the top are still incredibly difficult. Minnesota has high expectations this year. We play them. Same with Purdue. They hope to be better. So it's not looking the brightest for schedule, but any Big Ten team who wants to do something has to squeak out a few of these difficult wins, and we did that last year. Washington was one of the best wins that I've watched in a long time, and you're gonna have to do that. But I just think this team, with how they've been playing, is that you can rely on the offense. I've never really said that as a fan, rely on the offense. I haven't. But every team has their strengths and their weaknesses, and clearly our glaring strengths is our offense. And if we can put up good numbers against these premier Big Ten teams, we can afford to give up a few points. And with how the defense is playing, you are going to expect that. But with with how our offensive defense is set up, I think we're expected to give up the points in the game, but we have like the comfort that Kaliakmanis and our receiving core will be able to put up these numbers like they do against Ohio and Miami Ohio. So just knowing that we have a very steady offense that's going to put up points is a good sign going into Big Ten play because honestly, I think the more the defense plays games, the more they kind of gain chemistry with each other. It's a very new defense to play with each other. A lot of transfers, a lot of freshmen. I think they'll just consistently get better. It's practice over the summer is nothing compared to these games against no matter who you're playing against. So the more they play, the more they get better, and I have the confidence that by mid-season, they'll be back to the standard of Rutgers defenses in the recent years.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you said that kind of stands out a lot is steady offense. If you're looking at kind of the stats from their first 2 weeks, um, the high in rushing and high in receiving in terms of players, the same Raymond and Strong, respectively, in each of the weeks. So, I mean, you're always going to be looking to this kind of core group of guys that they've built up on the offense. And of course, Kaliakmanis, we talked about it last week, has now gotten comfortable with this group heading into year two. So I agree with you. There's going to be some ups and downs throughout Big Ten play. It's always going to be tough being in this conference. But overall, I think that there's some chances for some big upsets this year. And I think that teams really do need to take Rutgers seriously when they have them on the schedule for that week. Even when we go, I think we're going away to Penn State, which is going to be. Oh no, we are home versus Penn
Oh,
State. We're away to
well,
Ohio State. So
see, I don't want to get my hopes up high, and I really don't. I'm trying to keep myself like just calm and just get through the season. But we get to Penn State and we were 7 or 8 wins on the season somehow. And we kind of just run through this Big Ten schedule and bang out like 4 or 5 wins. That game at home Thanksgiving weekend will be, I hope, to be one of the best environments that Rutgers has had because Penn State, in their minds, they don't consider that a rivalry game. They have like oh, we always beat up on them. It doesn't really matter. Like, and Rutgers fans try to hold that rival. We try to claim Penn State as a rival. So that'd be an amazing game to host, and hopefully we're a competitive team at that point in the season. But yeah, no, just just keep this going. Kalik Manis is looking amazing. I think I mentioned this in the Ohio post game um when we hosted. I'm not a fan of these RPO runs that are getting
yeah.
Kaliakmanis, like, getting him on the ground. There a couple of times, maybe I think it was the 3rd quarter, it was back-to-back plays. One, it was like a QB scramble, they tried to pass it, nothing was open, he took off, and he kinda, like, slided down, and then after got hit when he was sliding, and his head, like, hit the ground, and he was, like, sitting on the ground for, like, 10 seconds, kinda shaken up, got up, he was good, and then the next play, I don't know why, I don't understand the call, but they ran an RPO or an option run, and Kaliakmanis, yeah, he took it, right? He held it because the running back would've gotten stuffed, and he just took another big hit. This doesn't really like, I don't understand the play calls because you're putting your most valuable player in risk of getting a severe injury against Miami, Ohio, when you're up double digits late 3rd quarter. I really don't think it's worth the risk of the few extra yards you're gonna get maybe on the ground with your quarterback than running with Raymond or Campbell. And he's so important because none of our offense happens without him. I don't care that the receivers are getting open every play. I'm telling you, AJ Surace, our backup quarterback, is not making the consistent throws that he's making. So I really hope that Shiano kind of sees this and Shiraka kind of sees this, and they hopefully limit it against Norfolk State because you want a healthy roster going into Big Ten play, and your quarterback on option runs is just not the way to suffer an injury. So it's one thing that I'm a little sketched out about, but hopefully they kind of see that in the film and
Well, as we
stop
kind of
those
wrap
calls.
up our week two post game show and game recap, a couple things to mention. Kyle Monungai will hopefully be making his professional debut on Monday with the Bears. There will be on Monday Night Football this week, so probably the most illustrious alumni to come out of Rutgers football in the past couple of years, besides his colleague Pacheco, who played with the Chiefs in Brazil on Friday night. So, some cool things to look out there with regards to Rutgers alumni in the next couple weeks as the NFL kicks off as well. But of course, next week, as we mentioned a couple times, Norfolk State, Michael Vick at the helm of that FCS school. And hopefully it will be a nice week of experimenting. But thank you, Dylan, so much for joining me again on another weekly recap for the chopping block. We'll be back next week, of course, hopefully to break down a big blowout win. Any final words, Dylan?
No, just a good win today, I guess. Keep this going.
Yeah, let's keep it going. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check out the website, which has been on the screen the whole time. Thank you again, and we will see you next week after Rutgers and Norfolk State.